Here I am back with part 5 of making Great Western Railway Open Wagon 02, and previous to the part 4, I've been working on off the camera. I've been working on a texture, and I decided at the end of the last part 4, that what I produced as far as the leaf springs here and the axle box as just sort of blank greys wasn't adequate at all. And so what I did is if I go into here, this is my folder, where are we, this one. If I open Windows Photo Viewer, here we are, this is the one I'm working from. Now I've made a slight change here with this, but what I did is I decided that this sort of complicated arrangement needed to have a bit more detail than I was able to provide it just with the mesh, so the texture was the way to go. So I created a new texture, which I called here axle box. You can see there, that's axle box TGA, and it's a scan from another photograph, and also you can see how I've got a block of sort of indeterminate grey mess, and I've also removed and blocked out some background here, but essentially that gives me the texture that I need to reproduce the spring and the fittings, hangers, whatever they're called, the axle box itself and the fitting to it. It's not exactly the same as the one that's in this model that I'm making, but it's close enough. And so what I've done is, if I put this into wireframe, you'll see that, and let's remove or hide some of these so we can actually see what's going on. So let's hide that, hide the gauge. That's just a copy of the, we don't need those either. There we go. So this is what I've been working on, and you'll see that it is simply a series of boxes, three-dimensional boxes. That one's been divided into two sections, and this second section here, the end of it has been shrunk down using the scaling tool. This, which is where the springing is now, let's put that back into smooth and highlights. You can see there the springing. And it's always the face, the outer face, that I'm most concerned with, because that's the one that's going to have the greatest impact on the look of the model. So the other faces, I've basically just smeared some of the other parts of the texture over them, just to create that sort of trick the eye. But here I actually made a spline, an elliptical spline, that's up here, top left. I used the ellipse to create this curve here, and then I edited the other one there, and I put it over my first effort, which was simply a box which I'd curved, and followed the texture, textured it, and then followed the texture very closely in order, and altered the individual points on the individual vertices on here. So if I select vertex, you can see there's more vertices than in the box, and that of course means that my polygon count for this is a little bit higher, but it's still only 32, which I think is acceptable. Then further down, in order to give this a bit more of a 3D impact, I took the shape here. This is basically a tube, half a tube with a box. Again, it was a spline. It was, where are we? I used a rectangle and a circle, cut the circle in half, joined the square and the circle together, removed the unnecessary segments, then extruded it. That was the most complex shape, I think, that I did. And there, it's still only 19 polys once it's been reduced to polys. And all the rest are just rectangles, as you can see, of varying shapes. And some there, that's not a rectangle, is it? That's is it a no, it's not a parallelogram. Anyway, I forget what the name of that is. It's like a bit of a wedge. So then once I'd put the texture over it, then it begins to look a lot better, I think. And you begin to get the idea of the axle box and the W frame, which again had its own. Now the W frame is just this, which is actually taken from a photograph and just darkened and smeared a bit, softened slightly, and that's 128 by 128, so that's quite big. And this one is 512 by 256, which means if I have a look in here, my TGA is 385 and W frame 49. That's not too bad. This one is quite large, but I'm prepared to go with that, because although it will impact very slightly on the video card, creating your model in Trainz, the positive side is I think it gives a much better effect, and I'm prepared to live with that. And I know there's extra bits which I should have in here, but you reach a point where you just say, right, that's it. And frankly, I've reached it with this. These are individual cylinders with a box in between to replicate the attachment of the springs to the hanger there. And if we unhide everything, you can see how it looks with the wheel, which I think it's beginning to come together. If we pull back a bit, that's going to look quite well, quite good. Okay, so let's not unhide everything a minute, and what I want to do is select all of this. What I have done also is I've gone through and I've made sure that as many of the faces that I could delete, I have deleted, that I have removed those. I think there's maybe a couple more. Let's have a look here. There we are. I think that face there might be one that's about to go. And here, I think this is a clone, obviously, of that one. So let's take that out, so I can remove that one as well. I know it seems rather petty doing this, considering look at all those faces around there. They're all doing things. Faces that aren't doing anything are just a waste of time, a waste of face, or a waste of space. The other ones that I want to have a quick look at is this box here, just to remind myself that I did actually remove the unnecessary polygon. Yes, it's not picking up that end. So both of those ends of that box are buried in to the cylinders. I'll have a look here. It's we zoom in on this one. We've got a cylinder, and a box, and that side there and that side there are both buried in the cylinders, so therefore they don't have to appear. You can delete them. Actually, that gives a good impression of the simplicity of the of what I've done there. I'm just a little bit concerned there because I'm not centered. Let's have a look. Let's make sure everything is centered onto this. So let's make sure that onto the axle box. So let's zoom out. Make sure I select everything. There we are, and let's make sure everything is centered. Okay, now make sure the W frame is centered. Always use this one as the guide. X, there we are, that's better. And this one, X, move it over. This one, because once I've done this, then it's going to give me my standard fitting, which I will use repeatedly. And just make sure that that one's centered up there, and this one. Select them individually because otherwise you'll find they jump about. and they center to each other, not to, or in a mob. Just make sure that that one's centered. Okay, and now because that did actually those frames, now that looks okay. I'm just comparing that to that. I think we're all right. Close enough. Okay, and now that's going to give us our standard axle box and W frame. So I'll group that. Okay, and let's unhide everything else. And let's have a look here, see what we're doing. Yep, okay. So my next step is to start to duplicate these, to clone these. We've got 228 polys altogether there, and make sure the group itself is centered. Okay, so we're going to clone it, and then the position is down here, 3'3.084. Take out the minus, and minus means it's over to the left of this line here, plus is on this side. So take out the minus. It's this measurement here, the x-axis is over here, so that's wrong, so I can delete that. So what we want is the position of the y-axis, which is 41533. So this is x minus x plus, this is y plus y minus. So let's clone that and stick in a 0, a minus rather. There we go. And that should now be positioned correctly over that wheel set. That doesn't really matter at this stage, but it is. Now to do the other side, what I will do there is don't use reflect. I never use the reflect function. It's a nightmare. I've used it on occasion for a particular job, but it's only to use it as a guide to mirror something, to create a guide which I then copy by creating new meshes, or by I think Z we're all right. So here I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees, and the first thing I'm going to do is ungroup it, and I want to make sure everything is correctly referenced, and also that everything is now correctly centered. Here we are, and now I'll group it all again. Okay, and let's center the pivot in the group. Doesn't necessarily mean to say it's correctly positioned in the pivot of the group, but the pivot of the group is correctly positioned, but it should be the same as in this one, and our position here is 33084. So let's do that. 3'3.084, and that should bring us into that. Should be straight, exactly on top of it. So let's have a look in this view. Yeah, it looks like it is. You can just make out there's a slight colour tinge on the edge there, and that's this one showing through this one. Okay, so we've got that. Now our next step in this somewhat laborious process, but it's laborious in the sense that it's very useful. So let's move our spare bit of W frame away over there. We're going to delete all these in due course, and then all we do with this is we clone it again, and we move it to plus 41385, and let's just check again to make sure we're looking right. Yeah, no we're not, you see. It's always a little variation, so let's just see where we should be. 41553, and this was 41385. So let's change that, and that I find is a function. It's still not right, isn't it? 41553 33084 33084. I'm checking these positions here. 41385 41553. That should be 41553, 41553. So in the rotation, there is something not exactly spot on. So when it's centered, and I suspect that it's these hangers here. I want the W frames. What I'm saying is that these are not exactly precisely positioned, but they're close enough. I'm not going to fret about that. So we have, at last, we have most of the of what we need for the wagon, and for the running gear of the wagon. And there's still quite a lot to do, because there's all the brake gear, the couplings, and of course the wagon body itself. And just want to have a look at our picture again. So we've got like a channel girder here, but it comes out at an angle. So there is a higher girder, part of the girder there than it is here, a wider part. So let's have a look and see if we can see that in our plan there. Right. But that, I think, is probably just part of the fitting. I think this is just a U-shaped channel, and the way I'm going to make that is very simple indeed. It's going to be 3 rectangles. There are plenty of other ways to do it. I go for the simplest. You can, I say that about the simplest because what I'm going to do, I'm thinking about the inside of the wagon, the look of it, because that lower piece there, or rather the top of the U-shaped channel, you'll see what I mean as I go. So first of all, it's going to be a box, and it's going to be, let's zoom in a bit, and it's going to be a box. Pick up a box, there we are. That, I think, is the length that we want, and I'm just going to make it an inch thick. 9 1/4 inches, 15'2", that looks like 15'3" to me. Okay, and let's make sure we've got it centered, and let's make sure we are centered, and moving the base of the wagon. Now again, it looks like that's an equal distance from there to there, there to there, and yet on the plan we've got a bit over there and we're over the plan here, so it's a compromise again, but that's what I'm going to run with. And furthermore, what I'm going to do is my next step is I'm going to clone that. Where are we? Y. And I'm going to get another colour, blue, and let's make it what's 9'2", so let's have a go at, see how 3 feet, no, 4 feet, 4'6", getting there. This is going to be our wagon side. 4'6" looks correct. Okay, and then as far as this is concerned, because we're in the middle of the wagon at the moment, so that's not going to be of much use. Let's have a look up here and zoom back, and we'll do this side over here. So just got to find the correct piece. That, I think, is one of our W irons. Just delete it out of there. There we are. Don't really need it because we've done it now. And so let's take this over. Now, except that there is depth there, depth in there, all the way along, and from there to there. So I'm doing this darker piece here at the moment, so I'm going to take that back a tad, so it's positioned like 3'6" looks right to me. So this piece, I think I've positioned it about right. Let me see, 5'5" out from the. Yep. Let's have another quick look at the picture. So we're going to come in and then come in a little bit. Okay, so I shall now just select this, clone it out, and rotate 90 degrees. It's maybe a little thick. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm going to take it down to, so it's got an inch there at the moment. Let's take it down to ½ an inch. Less is more. Okay, and we don't need all that width. 6 inches is probably going to be more than enough. In fact, probably too much. Yep, I'm going to take that down to 4, 3. Okay, and just do the wireframe. Let's make these visible a bit more. So I'm very impressed by Gmax's choice of colours. That's too much, I think. 3, I think I need about 2.5. 2. There we are. So let's just position this in. Take it down. That's the place I was watching. Still too thick, I think. Let's halve it. 2.5. Take it down. Sometimes what you need to do is to make some of these details a little thicker than they actually deserve to be in order to get the effect visually. Anyway, that's what I've noticed. I'm just going to clone this, take it up to here. And increase it from 2 to 8. No, nothing like. Just guessing. 6, possibly. 5. Okay. There we are. Bring it in and take it up. And this one, I think what I need to do I've only got it an inch thick, so what I'm going to do there is I'm going to convert it straight away, grab these and take them back. Most of that will be hidden, but obviously what I want is something that will be actually supporting, it's around the back here, actually supporting the hangers. So we need to make sure that that's actually doing the trick. It's far enough down. Yes, it is. So what I'm doing here is just blocking up for the look of the side frames, and I'm going to use my frames texture. I'm not going to start getting into all sorts of fancy textures here. I think the axle boxes and springs needed that sort of detail, but for this I'm going to stick with my frames. And first of all I shall take everything down to this sort of uniform grey. I will then want to make some adjustments. That face there, planar that, and make it black. Okay, and then this face, make sure it's the correct face. Yep. And that's plain on the plain eyes hiding behind there. Okay. Now I'm gonna lift up some of this and take that. And I want to flip it. Of course, the sunlight on that photograph makes a significant difference. There we are. Now what I may do is add some detail into that side frame in order to give it a more visual appeal, but at the moment I'm not too worried about that because I'm going to come back to those sort of things. These pieces I'm also going to use my frames texture, and again I'm simply going to repeat what I did before. Okay, but this top surface here, if we look here, yeah, this edge, let's take the edge first, planar map that, and give ourselves just this bright edge here. And then the upper part, what I want to do there is to take this down to about there, and this up to here. I may need to flip this. Basically I want this at the back and that right at this front edge. Let's just flip it. Can't see any difference at the moment. No, that's what I want. There we are. Good. And I'm going to do the same here on this one, this blue one here. Blue on blue isn't really helping, is it? Let's make that yellow. Now, and unwrap frames, most of it into that grey. Okay, let's have a look at the photograph again. So this edge along here, which is, I think actually is hidden underneath this, underneath the floor. I'm beginning to wonder if I even need this. Doesn't look like it. It looks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's the 7 planks. So that's definitely the floor. So what I'm not gonna, I'm gonna make that piece, I'm going to make that the floor. So that means changing what I've done. I'll leave it because it is already, it's already got a texture on it for the moment, but I want to go up here. I'm going to stretch it across the width of the wagon, And the way I'm going to do that is by seeing where the width of the outer vertices, 311,501. So I'm going to make this minus 311,501. And that will form the bottom, the floor of the wagon. And I think it actually needs to be a bit thicker, a bit deeper, because it's much deeper here than this. I mean, if that's 1/4 of an inch, that must be 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So, the way I'm going to do that is, let's have a look up here. And let's just pick up the upper ones. There we are. And they're at 3.9, well, they're virtually 4 feet, so if I'm going to make, that 4'2", let's just have a look at that. I think 4 foot 1.5. Maybe 4'1". Okay, so that is going to be both the upper part there. Now, although I've given it a texture, I'm actually going to alter this because this is going to be both the floor and the outer edge. Now that's going to be a different texture. I'm going to create a new texture which will be made to reproduce GW and all that planking detail and the door detail, and that will go straight onto that, but also it will go onto this piece. So I want that piece to have this is all going to be one texture, and that's going to be another texture there, so it's going to include this. So what I want to do then is to separate the floor. Will I get away with that? No, I think I can leave that. I'm just thinking that the underside will necessarily need to be textured from the side texture which I use, side and end texture which I am going to create to reproduce the wagon. And that same texture will be, well, map it over here, and also the internal texture will be there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift a texture from the wagons that I have reskinned. So I'm actually going to, I need to check with the creators of those that that's alright for me to do that, and if it is, then I shall use part of that texture for my Great Western wagons. Don't know why that should be at that position there. It needs to be there. So what I'm going to do is those lower vertices, make sure I get the right, make sure I get, yes, X is the, taking it the wrong way, Z, I mean, even Z's not the right way either. Third time lucky, there we are. So I wanted to make sure it butted onto there, and so what I'm going to do is now just arbitrarily alter the size of this, which is part of my framing. Let's bring it down to there. Okay, so that's going to give me my base for the wagon, and that's the side part of the frame. Okay, so this box here, which is the other part of the wagon, it's going to be the main part of the wagon side, and it needs to be a box because I want to model the interior. So it's going to be a thin box, and let's just check that I've got everything right. That's my floor, wagon floor. It's going to be the wagon side. So let's bring this out to the edge here. And there is an overlap, so I've got to correct that. And I'm too far over, you can see. There we are. So that should give us the basis for our wagon. And at this stage I think that what I can do is to eliminate some unnecessary stuff. At this stage I think I would save. Let's just go to save and save as. And I'm now going to call this save as, and I'm going to call it version. That was version 1, number 2, so I'm going to call it version 2, number 1, and save it because version 1 had these primitives stored, and now I'm just going to lose those completely because I don't need them. I don't need the gauge. And what I will do is I shall now just move a copy. Just rotate it. degrees, see where it was. 3'6". And the lower piece again, just going to edit, clone, and move it over, rotate it, and get its position, which was 37501. 3'7.501. And I must make sure that I've got those still centered and correctly positioned, aligned correctly. Here we are. Let's check there. Yes, they're hard. Looking through one to the other, they're sort of each other. That's good. Now our wagon's really beginning to take shape. So I shall clone this and just position it over there. And I shall clone it again. Rotate it 90 degrees. Position it again. And pulleys, not pulleys, vertices on X, just the X please, Professor X. Okay, so now that just needs to be positioned correctly. That doesn't look much as a wagon, and a little yellow box like this isn't going to look very much, isn't going to look good, but all will be revealed with the texture, which will materially improve the look of the wagon. Make it look like a wagon, and I just need to check that I can use the interior texture that John Whelan uses for his private owner wagons. Now obviously I've got the a lot of detail here, the buffers and the 3-link coupling, which is going to be non-animated. I'm not going into that. And there's a lot of unnecessary faces here. The corners all need to be sorted out, so but that's essentially the look of the wagon as it is at the moment. So I'm quite happy with that. That's going to be version 2, version 2.2. There we go. And in the next part, it will not be, I'll not be using Gmax. In fact, what I'll be using, where are we? Where's photo? This one, which can take a little while to load up. But you can see here, just while that's loading, you can see here I've got this, no, register later, finish. This is basically what I'm going to be using as my pro forma. So this will be this is for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as you can see, 7 plank wagon, and this is made up of all the different, if I take out the dirt, what we got there, that's the old background, and then got various shadows. So I've copied a lot of this from Bob Saunders and John Whelan, who've done wagons like this using these. I'm just turning the layers off just to show you how it all builds up. And so that's the shadow there, the main lettering, there's the shadow, main lettering, shadow, loads and loads, and that's the body colour. There we are. So I shall be using a variation of this, but that'll be that's straightforward. That's my own. That will be my own texture. That's how I would do a reskin for private owner wagons, just creating the image like this. If I go down to my private owner wagons, what I'll also be doing is, where are we? Here's, I think this is John's. Yeah, this is John Whelan's. And we've got the texture 7 plank wagon TGA. This is what I want to use, this bit here. So I want to lift this bit of the interior texture, that's the floor, the inner side and the ends, and I want to use that with my own GWR side, but it's this bit. I don't want to have to redo all that myself, so, and I'm certainly not just going to crib it, just use it without permission. So always, if you're doing anything like this, do make sure that if you're using textures that somebody else is using their models, that you do use you do get their permission to do so. And I found most Trainz are very generous individuals indeed, and all you need to do often is simply credit them for use of their texture. So that will be what I'll be doing, and so that will then give me my side here. And what I will do is I will bring 3-link coupling from my and buffers, probably, just depends what the buffers look like. have a look here. Yeah, they're just ordinary round buffers. Are pretty straightforward to do. The 3-link hook and 3-link coupling. I have to make that, of course, but you can see it's well on its way. So there we are. That's where I've got to at the moment. I hope you found this video of interest, and if you have, please give me a thumbs up, and if you have any queries at all, I'd be happy to answer them. Just post them underneath the video in the comments, and please subscribe to my channel.